In the 32nd year of the Galactic Concord's expansion, humanity was still considered a curiosity. Newcomers, the strange primates who had somehow clawed their way from a single blue world into the wider spiral arm. Their ships were blocky, their technology inelegant, their biology fragile by galactic standards. They were tolerated, studied, occasionally ridiculed, but rarely respected. On the diplomatic station Valorum Prime, where 1,000 species gathered under artificial suns, Ambassador Leary of the Aurelian Combine adjusted her ceremonial mantle. Her species were renowned across the Concord, tall, luminescent-skinned, with filaments of silver hair that glowed faintly in ultraviolet. They considered themselves the aesthetic pinnacle of evolution. Beauty was not simply cultural to Aurelians, it was religion, law, and hierarchy. The more radiant your form, the higher your status. Leary's shimmered like starlight. She stood at the grand atrium, overlooking the arrival gates. A new delegation was coming today. Humans. Again. The last meeting with them had been awkward. Their ambassador had perspired heavily, stumbled over phrasing, and committed a minor insult by offering a handshake to a being whose species considered physical contact sacred. This time, Leary had been assigned to greet them personally. Not out of respect, but out of curiosity. Humanity fascinated her in an odd way. Their species was visually unimpressive by Aurelian standards, dull skin tones, uneven hair, soft eyes with too much white showing. And yet they persisted. They multiplied. They adapted. The air at the gate rippled as the human shuttle docked. The doors parted. 3 humans stepped through. 2 were clearly aides, 1 male, 1 female, both in simple diplomatic uniforms. The 3rd was their ambassador. She was female, short by galactic standards, dark-skinned, hair bound neatly behind her head. No bioluminescence, no ornamental ridges, no pheromonal shimmer. Nothing remarkable, except her eyes. They were steady, observant, unafraid. Ambassador Leary's voice chimed like tuned crystal. Welcome, honored representatives of humanity. I am Ambassador Leary of the Aurelian Combine. The human woman inclined her head politely. Ambassador Okoye, it's a pleasure to meet you. The translators relayed tone and nuance perfectly. Still, Leary could not stop herself. Aurelian custom valued sincerity expressed through observation. It was polite to compliment form, color, vibrancy. It was expected. She studied Okoye. Plain, efficient, unadorned, functional, a being designed for endurance, not splendor. And so, without malice, simply habit, Leary said, "You are beautiful." The words left her luminous lips like a blessing. Silence followed. Okoye blinked. Her aides stiffened. The nearby diplomats, several dozen species, turned their sensory organs toward them. For Aurelians, such a statement carried weight. It implied admiration, interest, even potential elevation. Okoye gave a small, controlled smile. "That's very kind of you, Ambassador." But her eyes sharpened. The greeting proceeded. They walked the atrium, discussed trade routes, defense treaties, cultural exchange. Leary noticed that Okoye's polite demeanor never faltered, but something calculated was happening behind her gaze, like a puzzle being solved. At the end of the tour, Leary said, "I hope your species feels welcomed here. The Concord values diversity, even unconventional forms." A polite Aurelian euphemism. "You are odd, but tolerated." Okoye's smile grew thinner. "Oh, we feel welcomed. Thank you." That night, Okoye did not sleep. In the human delegation quarters, she sat at a terminal reviewing everything her team had learned about Aurelian culture. Beauty as hierarchy. Radiance as authority. compliments as political signals, social rank determined by luminescent intensity, mating rights assigned by appearance, even legal credibility influenced by perceived aesthetic value. She recorded a message to Earth. "They don't just value beauty," she said quietly. "They worship it, and they think we're lesser." Her science attaché, Dr. Reyes, leaned forward. "So what do? Okoye's eyes gleamed. "We show them something they can't ignore." 2 days later, the Concord's Grand Diplomatic Assembly convened. Representatives from over 300 species gathered in the Hall of Infinite Colors, an architectural wonder designed by the Aurelians to reflect and refract every wavelength of known light. It was a temple to appearance. Ambassador Leary stood near the central dais. She was glowing brighter than usual. Rumor had spread that humanity wished to make a formal cultural presentation. No one expected much. Humans had no bioluminescence, no color-changing skin, no pheromone art. What could they possibly display? The lights dimmed. Ambassador Okoye stepped forward. She carried no instruments, no ornaments, only a small remote device in her hand. "Honor delegates," Okoye said, voice echoing through translators. "When we joined the Concord, many of you observed that humans lack the natural splendor displayed by your species. That is true. We do not glow. We do not shimmer. We do not radiate visible light." She paused. "But we learned long ago that beauty is not only what the eye sees." She pressed the remote. The ceiling above them dissolved into darkness. Gasps rippled through the hall. Then stars appeared. Not simulated lights. Not simple projections. But a fully immersive stellar panorama, each star rendered with astronomical precision, pulsing in accurate spectral colors. Nebulae bloomed in silent majesty. Spiral galaxies turned slowly overhead. Worlds unknown drifted past in breathtaking silence. Delegates stared upward, awed. Okoye's voice continued. "On our world, before we ever traveled to the stars, we looked up at night. We wondered. We dreamed. We learned to build machines to reach those lights. We taught ourselves mathematics to measure them, physics to touch them, art to honor them." Images shifted. Human cave paintings of constellations, ancient observatories, Renaissance star charts, rocket launches, orbital stations, first steps on alien soil. Okoye walked slowly as she spoke. "We have no natural glow, so we learn to capture light, shape it, understand it, create it." The hall filled with human artistry, music synced to star pulses, colors dancing in mathematically harmonized waves, patterns that responded to the heartbeats of the watching crowd, algorithms that adjusted brilliance based on observer neural activity, creating a living tapestry of shared perception. Aurelian delegates, whose culture revolved around physical radiance, found themselves overwhelmed. Their own luminescent skin flickered involuntarily in resonance with the display. Leary felt it. Awe. Humility. A strange, uncomfortable admiration. Okoye's voice softened. "You called me beautiful when we met. In your culture, that was a statement of value, of rank, of worth." She looked directly at Leary. "In human culture, we believe something else. That beauty is created, not inherited. That it is built with effort, imagination, and will." The stars above collapsed into a single brilliant point, then exploded into a radiant burst that filled every wavelength the Aurelians could perceive, 10 times brighter than their own natural glow. Delegates shielded their eyes. Some cried out in astonishment. When the light faded, the hall returned to normal. Okoye stood calmly at the center. "We may not shine on our own," she said, "but we learn to make the universe shine with us." Silence. Then applause. Not polite. Not diplomatic. Genuine. Awestruck. Even the Aurelians clicked their resonance tendrils in deep admiration. Leary stepped forward, her glow subdued for the first time in her life. "Ambassador Okoye," she said, voice quiet. "I see now that I misunderstood your people." Okoye inclined her head. "You said I was beautiful," Okoye replied. "So, I decided to show you what humanity considers beauty." Leary's luminous eyes met Okoye's steady human ones. "You have succeeded." In the days that followed, everything changed. Humanity's status in the Concorde shifted overnight. Not because of weapons, not because of threats, but because they had redefined beauty itself in the eyes of those who worshipped it. Aurelian scholars began studying human art. Engineers collaborated on light capture arrays. Diplomats sought human advisors on cultural perception. Even social hierarchies among the Aurelians subtly changed, as their people began to realize that brilliance could be manufactured, not merely born. As for Ambassador Leary, she visited Okoye privately before the human delegation departed. "I once believed beauty was destiny," Leary said. "That some species were chosen to lead because they shined." Okoye poured them both tea. "And now," Leary smiled, faintly, "now I believe beauty is ambition given form." Okoye raised her cup. "To ambition, then." They drank. Years later, historians would mark that moment as the beginning of the human aesthetic revolution. A cultural turning point. The day the galaxy learned that humanity's greatest weapon was not strength, nor intellect, nor endurance, but the audacity to redefine what mattered. And it all began with a simple sentence. He told her she was beautiful. What she did shocked everyone. Years later, on a distant terrace overlooking Valorum Prime's artificial horizon, Ambassador Leary stood beside a new monument. It was a sphere of crystalline glass, threaded with human-engineered light filaments. Inside, a miniature galaxy spun endlessly, stars forming, dying, and being reborn in eternal motion. A plaque beneath it read in both Aurelian glowscript and human text, "Beauty is not what you are born with. Beauty is what you dare to create." A group of young Aurelian students gathered nearby, their skin shimmering softly as they watched the galaxy dance. One of them turned to Leary. "Ambassador," the child asked, "is it true that humans do not glow at all?" Leary's silver eyes softened. "Yes," she answered. "They do not." Then how did they become the brightest species in the Concorde? Leary looked toward the distant docking ring, where a human ship was departing, plain, gray, unremarkable in shape. Yet from its hull, a newly developed human light array cast rippling auroras into space, painting the void in impossible colors. Leary smiled. "Because," she said, "they refused to accept the universe as it was given to them." Far away, aboard that departing ship, Ambassador Okoye watched the auroras fade behind them. Dr. Reyes leaned against the observation rail. "Think they'll ever stop talking about that presentation?" he asked. Okoye chuckled softly. "Not if we keep giving them new reasons." She turned back to the stars ahead, cold, distant, waiting. Humanity had never been the strongest, never the fastest, never the most radiant, but they had become something far more dangerous. They were the species that looked at the galaxy and said, "We can make it more beautiful than it already is," and then did exactly that. Final line. In a universe that worshipped light, humanity became the hand that shaped the stars.